Thanks for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you.
Can you tell us why you want to run for Congress?
Washington, D.C. is broken, and I fix things. I've done that in the 15 years I've been mayor of Hammond so far. I took something that was complex, it was complicated, and in a lot of ways it wasn't working right. And over the last 15 years, I'm not saying Hammond's utopia, but we're heading in the right direction. And I bring a unique skill set that I think is lacking in Washington, D.C. right now, and I think I'm part of the solution. And I'd really, I'm patriotic, I'm a veteran, and I want America to move forward. I want us to start talking together again and start working together so that we can make this country as great as it can be.
You talk about Washington being broken. Wouldn't you prefer to stay mayor rather than, being one of 435 members in the House where you'd have far less influence?
Well, it's going to take an adjustment to go from being a boss to being the most junior member of the Democratic caucus, for sure. But I think that I want to use my skill set to help the biggest number of people. And I'm a region person. Now, of course, I'm a Hammond person. That's where I live, and that's the city I love. But I love the region, and I think that I could help a greater number of people with my unique skill set by, going to Washington, D.C. as opposed to being mayor. And I love my job, don't get me wrong. I'm the luckiest person ever to be able to run Hammond for the last 15 years. But I think that I could get into Washington, D.C., and I could help bring this party back a little bit to the center and to stop being so extreme. And I think I could lead the way and show that Republicans are Americans also, and we need to work together, and hopefully my attitude will filter through the rest of the Democratic caucus.
What gives you the optimism to think that will happen, given the hyper-partisanship in Washington right now? A lot of people have said they wanted to change Washington and end up becoming a part of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm optimistic in general. That's just how I am, and I stick around, and I'm a team player. I'm a team builder. I'm a loyal friend, but at the same time, I'm very influential, and I think that my style will filter through the rest of the caucus, and I think ultimately I'll become a leader in Congress. I think that people will look up to me and see how I conduct myself, and hopefully they'll change the hyper-partisan view that they have. And, instead of having Representative AOC, making extreme statements about the left, hopefully people will hear some of the statements I'm making as well and say, okay, there's some people in the Democratic caucus that want the party to go further left, but there's also some people in the Democratic caucus, like Representative McDermott, that wants to bring the party back to the center. And, I could equal out the extreme left statements. I mean, the Democratic Party is in danger of becoming a party of coastal elites if we don't watch it. We need to win in the Midwest, and I've proven that I could win tough races in the Midwest. I get Republicans to vote for me in the Midwest, and if I take that attitude to D.C., hopefully Speaker Pelosi will listen when I offer suggestions or critiques about the positions we're taking as a party. I don't think it's helping us win in the Midwest.
But what specifically can you do? Because you said you are just going to be the most junior member, just going into a room and saying, hey, we're doing something wrong. Is that going to change? Do you really think that'll change something?
Well, let's take the impeachment for an example. It's easy to go along with a group, especially if you have the numbers, which the Democratic Party has the numbers in the House, and in the Senate they don't have the numbers. And I think most Americans realize that if President Trump is impeached in the House, that based on pure numbers, by the time it gets to the Senate, it's dead on arrival. And in the meantime, we're going to be going through 4 or 5 months of an impeachment process and then a trial for removal. And if this is all going to end up ultimately just partisan politics, the Democrats in the House are going to vote to impeach and the Republicans in the Senate are going to vote to acquit, then why are we going through this exercise? Why don't we take Mayor McDermott's suggestion to censure the president, have serious hearings, bring out serious facts, censure the president, and then beat him in 2020? I mean, why not? So even though I may be the most junior member of Congress, when I walk in, I'm still going to have opinions, and I'm still going to share my opinions, and people may not want to hear it. But I think in this case, with the impeachment, for example, I think we're going to beat Donald Trump in 2020. And I think if the Democrats were listening to my point of view, we may be headed down a whole different course than we are right now.
Are you concerned some national Democratic groups are already targeting you, saying you're not sufficiently Democratic enough because of your view on impeachment, even though presumably it won't matter by 2021 when you get in. Is that a concern for you, that you're not going to be able to pick up the Daily Kos crowd?
Well, the Daily Kos has already done a story on me because they're concerned that I'm the favorite in this race, and if I win, that maybe I would bring a more moderate view to Congress. And the Daily Kos has an agenda, just like Mayor McDermott has an agenda, just like Speaker Pelosi has an agenda. But I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to be a loyal Democrat. But it doesn't mean I'm a robot. I'm going to go in there. I have opinions. I'm going to represent Northwest Indiana, Republicans and Democrats. I'm going to represent Indiana, Republicans and Democrats. And I'm an American. I'm a veteran, so I'm going to represent the United States. I want to work with people and get stuff done. I want to legislate, not investigate.
One of the top issues that Congressman Vislavsky has been pushing for the past few years is the South Shore train.
Mm-hmm.
You initially seemed somewhat opposed to it,
mm-hmm.
The expansion, but now you're fully on board?
Well, if you look at my history, I've been mayor a long time. In 2008, when this proposal first came out under my administration, Congressman Vislavsky was pushing for a train extension from Hammond to Lowell, and it would branch off in, I think it was in Dyer, and go off from Dyer to Valparaiso. And I was on board the train in 2008, and it fell apart in the legislative process. All right? Then we were approached again in 2015 by Congressman Vislavsky about this new iteration, and I was bargaining for my city. It was never, and it appeared as though I was hard against the train, but in reality, we were negotiating for a good deal, and we got it in Hammond. Hammond did come on board, $27 million worth of commitments with our seeded money, but in return for that $27 million, Hammond's going to see close to $200 million invested in it. We're going to have a maintenance facility. We're going to have 2 stations guaranteed, and a third, most likely, once the train is up and running. So I drive a hard bargain, and I did my job as mayor of Hammond. It was never, in my mind, it was never about whether I was for or against the train. So to answer your question, yes, I want to jump on board what Congressman Vislavsky has started and finish it. And, obviously the Westlake, I'm supportive of, and it's going to happen. And the double track is a no-brainer. It has to happen. And I would even go a step further and say I think we need to complete the link from Dyer to Valparaiso as well. Absolutely. And Dyer to Lowell is tougher because of the demographics. It's just not as much density heading down to Lowell. But Valparaiso has done great with their public transportation system, and a Valparaiso to Dyer link would just be amazing.
You were ready to go to challenge Congressman Vislavsky in the primary.
I was.
You said yesterday it's the worst kept secret in Northwest Indiana politics.
I didn't want to distract from the municipal races.
Right.
I knew what I was doing, and I think it's apparent that I was ready.
What are your thoughts about how many people are potentially going to enter this race now? Trustee Mervan, North Township is already in the race,
mm-hmm.
Could present a challenge for,
mm-hmm.
for you. You guys share a good chunk of the same voters right now.
No, Frank is...
Yeah.
I'm a friend of Frank's. I've always been a supporter of Frank's. Obviously, I'm not going to support him in this endeavor. In fact, I'm going to run hard against him in this endeavor. But, it would be ridiculous to say he shouldn't think this way and he shouldn't take this chance. I get it, why he is taking this chance. He's 50. He's got a good career, just like myself. A Representative Candelaria Reardon's talking about getting in, of course, because she's amazing in her own way as well. Reagan Hatcher, same thing. I even hear rumors that Senator Eddie Melton may be withdrawing from the governor's race to focus on this race. God bless. But the more the merrier. But I think that I bring a different brand. A lot of the people that are going to be running against me are going to talk about how they've supported the unions. I bring union jobs. I've created union jobs. A lot of people are going to talk about how they support veterans. I am a veteran. I spent 6 years in the United States Navy, 2.5 years underwater on an active military submarine. A lot of people are talking about, bringing jobs, back to the 1st Congressional District. I brought jobs to Hammond, Indiana. So there's a lot. I think when you look at the resume of the people that are talking about running against me, mine stands out.
How long have you been thinking about running for Congress? Is this something you've always wanted to do? Is this a logical next step for you, or is this, you've been mayor for a long time and this is an interesting chance to do something new?
my whole life I've thought about running for Congress, but I had an issue. The gentleman that was in Congress in a district I lived in has been there since the 1980s, and it didn't appear that he was ready to give it up anytime soon. And in our party, it's really, you are discouraged from running against incumbent Democrats. So if you're a good Democrat, like I consider myself to be, you're not supposed to run against Congressman Pete. Okay, and then Congressman Pete had the added advantage of not being fearful of losing in November because the district is so heavily slanted towards the Democrats that it's nearly impossible for a Republican to win. Yeah. So if we're not challenging Pete from our side, and the Republicans can't credibly challenge Pete from their side, you sort of have like a monarchy. You know, you have somebody that's been there for 34 years and they're really not fearful of losing their jobs, and that's not the way it's supposed to be either. You know, there's a reason they gave congressmen 2-year election cycles, and that's because they wanted them to stay in touch with what's going on in their cities and towns. And, you know, when I was considering challenging Congressman Pete, that was how I was thinking, is he sort of lost touch with his district because he hasn't had to face a primary challenge ever, and he can't face a credible Republican because it's just not realistic. Mm-hmm. So you sort of lose touch. That was where I was thinking about going before, you know, Congressman Pete decided not to seek re-election.
If you get elected, would you continue living in Hammond?
Absolutely.
Would you move to D.C. or anything like that?
I would work in D.C. and live in Hammond, Indiana. Absolutely. I love my city. I love where I live. I love my house. I mean, but I would never live in Washington, D.C. and visit the region. I love the region. I want to live in the region and visit Washington, D.C. And that's the way it's going to be. I'll probably leave late Sunday night, take the last flight from Midway to D.C. I'll probably live in my office, and I'll come home Thursday as soon as work's done. And my wife and I have talked about this. My kids are grown. I mean, this is the perfect time for me to run for this office. My family supports me. My kids support me. My wife supports me.
Is there anything else you think voters should know about you or why you're doing this?
I've earned the right to be here and say what I'm saying. You know, I put myself, after high school, I didn't have a stellar high school career, but I put myself in, I joined the United States military for 6 years, and I had hard duty on an active duty sub, spent a lot of time underwater. I got out, I moved to the region full time, right after the Navy, put myself through college, put myself through law school, started my own business, passed the bar exam, and took over as mayor of the city of Hammond, which is probably in the region the second hardest political job you could have, only followed by the Mayor Gary. Mayor Gary is the hardest political job you could have. I had the second hardest, and I did it excellent for 4 terms. I just got elected my 5th term with no opposition. I mean, I earned the right to be here, and I want the right to fight for every city and town in Northwest Indiana. I want to fight for Valparaiso. I want to fight for Michigan City. I want to fight for Chesterton. I want to fight for Crown Point, Hobart. I want to visit kids in Tri-Town area. I want to do a good job for the region. I know the region like the back of my hand. I'm going to fight for every city and town, just like I fight for Hammond. You know, there's some people that say, you know, you've rubbed people the wrong way over the years. How are you going to get them back? Like Griffith, for instance, when we were disagreeing about the township issue. I said, you know what I'm going to tell the residents of Griffith? I'm going to tell the residents of Griffith, I'm going to fight like hell for Griffith. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Griffith gets the best deals that they can, because that's my job as congressman. My job as Hammond mayor, I did well. Sometimes people think I did it too well, because the criticism I hear about me is, oh, he only thinks about Hammond. That's my job. That was what I was getting paid to do, is represent Hammond. If I'm paid to represent the region, you'll be amazed at what I could do for this 1st Congressional District. I'm looking forward to this.